Hey YouTube, this is Marcus, or East Kentucky CB radio operator, depending on what channel this video ends up on. I thought it would take a few minutes to get political. Generally I try not to get political on YouTube because it's one quick way to lose some followers, but this is an issue that I think really affects everybody, and I think it's an issue where I could maybe impart some knowledge that may help hold some people accountable, maybe save a life or two hopefully, and at the very least make some people aware of a way in which they can help hold their government responsible, at least their local government. An issue that has been in the news a lot lately has been racism and excessive police violence. Now, police departments around the country I know are generally pretty autonomous. Our Salyersville City Police operate mostly independently of the Paintsville or the Prestonsburg City Police. They operate mostly independently of the state police unless there's an issue where it's out of our jurisdiction or they need help with something. The county sheriff gets elected and he picks his deputies. And so most of the time the police in your area are from that area. They are your neighbors, your business owners. Your elected official, the guy you voted for to put into office. So, the police are not, generally speaking, at least, they're not some like mysterious government officials who are out to get you. But there is racism in this country that still exists. There is excessive police violence, and so. The reason I bring up the fact that they operate mostly autonomously is to say that the relationship here in Salyersville, Kentucky, in a county of less than 20,000 people, with a city population of like less than 2,000, the relationship between the people and the police here is going to be a lot different than the relationship between the people and the police in a place like Chicago, where there are more people per square mile than there are in the entire county of Magoffin County, Kentucky. And a place like Chicago, which is, I believe, King County, Illinois, also has a much different ethnic makeup. Here, 90+% of the people are white, or they're a mix of white and Native American, and they identify as white. We have some Hispanics, we have some Asians, we have some African Americans. But generally speaking, at least as far as I personally have seen, there has not been any overt racism toward those people. Do people make racist comments in private? Yes. But as far as I'm personally aware, the overt racism that is shown to these people publicly is pretty minimal. But that's not necessarily the case in a place where, like Chicago, or New York City, or Los Angeles. That may not necessarily be the case, where you've got a much different ethnic makeup. You've got you've got a different income makeup. People there make a heck of a lot more money than the people here. People here are generally blue collar, not even really blue collar workers, because a lot of coal miners and people that get their hands dirty every day. They're hard working people that wear Red Wing boots. And get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, and go and work an 8, 12, 16-hour day for not as much money as most of the people in places like Seattle, Los Angeles, or New York. So there's attitudes, the culture, there's a lot of things that are different from place to place. I think that when we talk about police violence, we need to remember that culture has a whole lot to do with what's going on in this country. Chicago is just an insane hot mess right now. I was listening to the Chicago police radio a while ago. I'm going to talk about that here in a second. That's kind of the point of this video. And I mean, for 30 minutes, there was a rape. There was a guy who passed out with a plastic bag over his head. There was an armed robbery. There was some guy trying to escape from police and jumped out of a window onto the roof of a garage somewhere. There was people tagging stuff. There was a large fight in an alleyway, and police were trying to figure out how to handle it. They were talking about trying to figure out how to get a ladder from the fire department so they could get officers onto the roof of a building and calling in a canine unit. I mean, this is all in the course of 30 minutes. You know, here's what's going on in Cyrusville, Kentucky right now on my scanner. Right there. That's exactly what's going on right now in Cyrusville, Kentucky. Nothing. So, you know, things can vary wildly from place to place, and I think that we need to understand that the vast majority of police on a day-to-day basis do their job fine. If they are racist, they don't show it. They don't kill people unnecessarily. And I can't tell you how many videos that I have seen of police officers getting murdered on the side of the highway doing simple things, traffic stops, pulling the guy over for speeding or because he had a light busted out, walking up to the car and getting blown away on the side of the road because the guy had a revolver down in behind the door and shot the officer when he got close because he wasn't expecting that. An officer screaming, you know, please stop, while the guy just unloads a rifle into him while the officer's laying in the seat of his cruiser. You know, the guy got out of his car and came back to him, just blew him away. You know, and stuff like that happens all the time. So I think, on one hand, we need to keep in mind that most cops are good cops and do their job just fine every day. And I think we need to support those officers and let those officers know that we support them and that we appreciate everything that they do, because we know that they are doing a job that is mostly thankless and that the majority of us don't want to do. You know, I served in the military. I deployed to Iraq, but I would not want to be a police officer in this town and deal with the meth heads and the thieves and the things of that nature that we have a problem with. I would not want to be a police officer in Chicago to where I would have to worry about, you know, serious violence on a daily basis from the guys that I live next to. You know, it's one thing when you go to another country that has, you know, a quote-unquote war going on, but it's another thing when the guys that could kill you live a block down the road from you. You know, that's paints things in a different light when it's right next door to your home. And so I think we need to understand, you know, from the officer's perspective, that they do a mostly thankless job that the majority of us don't want to do. Now, on the other hand, on the other side of this argument, racism does still exist in this country. It's worse in some places than it is in others. There are white racists. There are black racists. There are people in every group that you want to come up with that are racist against, you know, whoever. I know people who are black, well, I know of people, I guess I should say, who are black and hate white people with a passion. White people can do no right. You know, everything is our fault. And I know white people who feel the same way about anybody who is, you know, brown or black of any color. And so racism is still alive and well in this country. That's just a fact that we're going to have to come to terms with. And I don't think it's ever going to go away, really. We can learn to live with it and learn to kind of, you know, legislate around it to the point where people can generally live their lives, you know, free of institutional racism. But what is happening in the news is that I don't think it's as much of a race issue. I think race is a contributing factor, because what seems to be happening is that police officers around this country they're going for lethal force before they go for anything else more often than not. Most of these cases where, you know, an unarmed person was shot on the side of the road, most of these cases seem to be cases where the officer was not being threatened with lethal force, and they just freaked out. They didn't go for their taser. They didn't go for their pepper spray. They went straight for their gun. Now, like I said, like I was talking about earlier with police being just murdered on the side of the road, I would never want to take a police officer's gun because, you know, I'm an NRA member. I believe that every person, every law-abiding citizen who's sane has a right to have access to lethal force as a means of self-defense if they need it. So I would never want to put a police officer in a situation where they might be threatened with lethal force and not have the ability to respond adequately. That they're the ones that get to go home at the end of the day and not the criminal who just shot them on the side of the road. So I don't want to disarm police officers, but what seems to be happening is there's some kind of a serious discrepancy with training to where officers who are not prepared are ending up patrolling the streets with firearms. Now, I know of police officers in certain places who were patrolling the streets with a firearm and arresting people before they ever spent the first day at the State Police Academy, before they ever had the first day of training. And to me, that's unacceptable. Because what would have happened if that officer had gotten into a situation that they weren't trained to handle, and they got scared when they had that gun on their side, you know? So one thing, but and race does have a lot to do with it in some places. Now, I just had a discussion with a friend of mine who we've had disagreements before, but generally speaking, I really respect the guy. I really get along with the guy. Sometimes he can be a little bit heated for more heat. I guess but it also, he's on the receiving end of a lot of this. So I can understand why sometimes he seems more aggressive and more heated about this issue than I do, because he's on the receiving end, where it's easy for me to stay calm about these things because generally speaking it doesn't affect me. But I was just having a conversation with him, and I guess maybe he spent some time in Chicago or he lived there, I'm not sure, but he said that in the times that he was in Chicago, he was literally scared of the police because of the way that some of them acted. And so there is an issue where the police they're being militarized. There is an element of racism in some police departments. Was it Los Angeles? I don't remember. I think it was Los Angeles. I could be wrong. Where the whole department was being examined from the bottom up because they were profiling people of color and things of that nature. And so the advice that I think I have, besides just saying the same thing that everybody else is saying, is that, try to be open-minded about the issue, is there are things that we can do as responsible citizens to try to keep our police officers, to try to hold them accountable and to keep tabs on things. And one thing I do is I have a police scanner. Now, around here, we don't have a problem with the police. The police do their jobs. They do their jobs well. They're friendly. I went to high school with about half of them. So, I'm personal friends with them. And like I said, they deal with the meth heads and the thieves and the people that I just personally wouldn't want to deal with on a day-to-day basis. I really thank and appreciate them for doing that. My thing was the military, where it was far away, and I came back home, and then they're helping the community, and so I really appreciate them for that. And we don't have a problem around here with. I can't remember the last time I even heard of an officer shooting somebody, let alone killing them. But in other places, it might be an issue. And I might recommend that you get a police scanner. Now, what a police scanner does, for those of you who don't know, it's a radio scanner. You can't talk on it, you can't transmit, but it basically you program frequencies in it and it scans through them. And when it picks up traffic on one, it stops and lets you listen to it. And what it does is you can listen to your police radios. I've got the county and city police, I've got the school buses, I've got our ambulance services, I've got the fire department, the rescue squad. And so anytime there's radio traffic from any of those services, I can hear it. Now, a lot of scanners will come pre-programmed with a lot of commonly used frequencies. This one does, but I deleted them all and just put our local ones in there because with that preset list, I was hearing people, when I hooked it up to my big antenna outside the house, I was hearing people 100 miles away that I didn't care to listen to because the thing never shut up. It lets me listen to the weather band. The biggest thing I use it for here locally is during severe weather, natural disasters, things of that nature, to keep tabs on what roads are closed, who might need help, and things of that nature. But in areas where police violence and racism is an issue, it might be a useful tool for you guys who are, I guess I could say, civically, if that's even a word, responsible. You people who want to work to better your community, who want to improve the relationship between the police and your community, to get a police scanner, because you can literally listen to the radio traffic as it happens. If there's an incident, you hear about it right then as it's happening. You don't hear about it an hour later on the news. You don't hear it secondhand, edited and cropped on Facebook or whatever. You hear it live as it happens, as they're saying it into their radios. You pick it up and you hear it. There's a variety of different scanners available. They can get expensive, especially if your emergency services, I guess I should say, not just police. If your emergency services use digital radios, because then you have to have a digital scanner to decode that, and that's when it gets expensive. You can get these little handheld scanners like this one I've got. I've got mine actually hooked to a power cord and adapted to my big antenna. But you can get these little handheld scanners with this little antenna here that run on batteries for less than $100. And I can have 200 frequencies in here at one time, not counting the weather bands. That's one option. You can get a base station one that's analog for about the same price, that plugs straight into your wall and has a little telescoping antenna built right onto it. But when you get into digital scanners, they'll run $400 or $500, and that might be a little expensive for some of you. So I'm going to show you another option. There are websites, legally of course, where people like me who have a scanner have volunteered a computer and their scanner to streaming a particular frequency or network over the internet, so that those of you who don't have a scanner or can't afford to buy one can still listen to the police traffic. Now, it doesn't have everywhere. Like, this area is not streamed because nobody in this county is streaming it. But most bigger cities are being streamed. I looked at Seattle a while ago because I used to live in that area, and most of Western Washington, most of the counties in Western Washington have somebody streaming services over the internet. Chicago's listed, New York, all those places. And so if there's an issue with if you want to monitor your police and emergency services service radios, and you don't have the money or just don't want to buy a scanner, check on these websites and see if you can stream the audio from somebody else, because chances are you can. Now, one website I use is radioreference.com. Radio Reference actually has a lot of resources. It's not just for that. And they don't even host the streams, but what they do is they catalog things and they kind of help you find what you're looking for. But they've got a frequency database, so if you have your own scanner, you can go there and you can get a list of the frequencies for various services to program into your scanner, so that you don't have to call the cops and be like, hey, give me, and try to get the information from the police. Now, like I said, this is all legal. Now, some places do have ordinances that say you can't have a scanner in your car. So, you can't have your handheld scanner in your vehicle listening to the cops while you run from the cops. That's kind of why they have that ordinance. But it is perfectly legal to listen to the police radios on a scanner in your house. RadioReference.com has a frequency database for all those services. It also has links to live feeds that are actually hosted by, I think, Broadcastify, and where you can actually listen to it on your computer if you don't have a scanner. So, the next part of this video is going to be a screen capture from my laptop, and what we're going to talk about is we're going to look at various different types of scanners, and I'm going to show you guys around Radio Reference and how to get to those streams and things of that nature for those of you who don't want to buy a scanner yourself. Alright, so here are some police scanners that you can buy on Amazon here. You can see here's a little Uniden handheld scanner for $82. You've got a base station scanner,
which basically means it comes with an AC adapter that you can plug it straight into your wall, and it's got a little stand, so it kind of looks, professional. Set it on your desk. Here's another one, a 500 channel with a clock and an FM radio and weather alert and things of that nature. Is another handheld scanner. But now where they start to get expensive is when you start getting into these digital scanners. You can see here's one with GPS support and things of that nature. Now, these digital scanners, this is where it starts to get expensive, and a lot, and I won't say a lot, but more and more police departments are actually starting to move to digital radios. So for those who aren't really enthusiastic about having an actual scanner in their house, streaming it over the internet might be the best option for you. But most police departments in the country, at least as far as I know, I could be dead wrong and we could be way behind, but at least as far as I know, most places in the country still use analog radios. You can see here, digital handheld scanner, $460. When they get digital, that's when they start to get expensive. But you can buy them, like I said, perfectly legally here on Amazon if you'd like to try out. And and one of the handiest things about them is, especially these ones that have weather alert, is they might stay dead silent until an alert comes across those NOAA weather channels, and then they'll pop over and let you hear the weather alert. So you can hear about severe weather and not just listen to the police. But let's pop over here to radioreference.com. Now, Radio Reference is, I think, an amazing website. It's generally kind of geared toward ham radio operators, but it's got a lot of good information for anybody really that likes the radio hobby, I guess you could say. So I've got a police scanner and I talk on CB radios, but I still find a lot of the information here useful. But what's relevant to this video is going to be two sections of this website. The first section we're going to talk about is databases. And we're going to talk about the frequency database here. Okay, we're going to open that in a new tab. Now, the frequency database is handy because this is where you're going to find the information that you need to program your police scanner if you buy one. So let's say that you want to look at Chicago. All right, let's go to Illinois. And then we pop down here. And we're going to go to Cook County. I was wrong. It's not King County. It's Cook County, Illinois. And you've got all this information down here. There's a lot of radio networks here. But you can see here the frequencies, the license used for all these frequencies. The key up tones, that's not really relevant to you guys. So these look like, you got all the information to program your scanner to listen to these emergency services here. Let's go. Jesus Christ, there's a lot in Chicago. Let's go back and let's look at my hometown here. All right. Make it a little bit easier to understand because it's not so overwhelming. We go to, let's just say Kentucky. Well, let's go to the next county over and check out Johnson County or Floyd County. All right, let's go where we at. All right, I saw it. There it is, Johnson County. And we've got all of the information to listen to the emergency services in Johnson County, Kentucky. As long as we're in range, with radios, you do have to be physically within range of their repeater to listen to it, kind of like how service with your cell phone, you have to be physically within range of a cell phone tower to have service on your cell phone. The same kind of thing is true about your police scanner. You have to be physically within range of that tower. Now, one thing you can do to help is if you have an internal antenna, when it's built onto the scanner, put it close to a window. Or if you can, put a big antenna outside your house. That would be even better. This is something I wanted to point out to you guys that I realized when I first recorded this section of this video that I didn't point out earlier. If you're talking about getting a scanner and you don't know whether you need a digital scanner or not, this is how you can tell. So let's say we're looking at New York City, all right? Most radio traffic for your emergency services is going to be broadcasted at FM. To receive FM traffic, you do not need a digital scanner. You can use just a regular analog scanner, and you can listen to that just fine. Now, this down here, I had to double check it to make sure I was correct before I gave you guys bad information. This P25, this is digital radio. This is a digital standard. So in order to listen to VIP escorts for Detective 2, you have to have a radio that is capable of picking up and demodulating digital signals. Now, they can also encrypt traffic when it's digital. So even if you have a digital scanner, see this one, I think that means encrypted, an abbreviation. Even if you have a digital scanner, if you don't have the encryption key, you still might not be able to listen to it. This one's P25, the citywide command. So most of these look like kind of government stuff. But all these things that say FM, you can pick up with a regular scanner. If you see any that say AM, you can listen to those with a non-digital scanner as well. Just a little, $30, $40, $80 scanners. You do not need a digital scanner to listen to those. If you're, and these are going to be under the mode column of the frequency list or frequency database for your area. So when you're checking your area's frequency lists and you're curious if you need a digital scanner or not, FM, FMN, AM, all of those things, those three can be picked up and listened to with a normal non-digital scanner with no problem. Or one other item I realized I did not cover is what information in this table is important. Generally speaking, since all you're going to be doing is listening to this radio traffic and you're not going to be transmitting, the only thing you really need to worry about is the frequency. You don't need to worry about the license because that's really just for reference purposes. If somebody wants to know what FCC license a particular frequency has been granted to, you don't need to worry about the type, the tone. You don't need to worry about any of this information. All you really care about is the frequency. Now the description, obviously, that's going to tell you roughly what it is. And you don't really even have to worry about the mode either, because as long as it's not digital, most scanners will pick up what mode it is and select it automatically. My CB radio transmits in AM, my police radios transmit in FM, and I can plug both of those frequencies in, and I can transmit on my CB, and the scanner picks up that it's AM and kicks over to that mode and demodulates it automatically. So all you really need to worry about when you're programming your scanner is making sure that it's not digital, it's FM, AM, or FMN, and the frequency. That's all you really need to worry about. All the rest of this stuff here is just miscellaneous information for technical users. The other section we're going to talk about, and the section that most of you may find the most interesting if you're not going to buy a scanner, is the live audio section. Now we're just going to click on live audio home, and this takes us to Broadcastify. And what this does, this lets you listen to any stream that anybody is this lets you listen to streams of police scanners that people they're dedicated. And what it is, it's not organizations or businesses, it's regular people who have just volunteered their equipment to broadcasting this information. So let's go to Chicago again, Illinois. And when it loads here, let's go up here to Cook County. And what that does is that will actually open, here we go, this little page. And you want to click on Launch County Web Player. As soon as it lets me click on it here, I will. There we go. And that's going to open a new window. Now in here, it's not going to just start playing instantly because you're going to have multiple services to pick from. So let's go down here and let's click on just Chicago Police. Now we've got This is Chicago. We've got a lot of stuff that we can listen to here. All these little small municipalities within the county beside Chicago. Well, let's just go Chicago Police.
Again, she gave 1255 Sunnyside, apartment 2E, Eddie. I'll tell her to come down.
So the child's father came back to the location with a gun and is parked in a dark-colored Audi truck, plate of Sammy 18234 in front. 6456 Maryland, 3rd District, phone 7 clear.
Now, that is live audio from the Chicago Police Department. That is happening right now. That's not coming from the news. That's not being filtered or anything like that. And I didn't know about this. I guess somebody is posting this. So somebody is actually posting a kind of a text transcript of specific incidents at least for the Chicago here. And you can scroll down here, and you've got all these different feeds available for Chicago. So if there is an issue in your area where you think the police are being exceptionally violent, particularly towards people of color when they shouldn't be, this is one way that you can hold them accountable. If maybe get organized with people in your community and take turns just monitoring this radio traffic. And if something shady happens, maybe record it on your computer. Maybe set your computer up to record this audio as it happens. So if something shady happens, you've got it recorded, so that if you want to or you need to, you can take it to court and say, hey, here's exactly what they were talking about. Here's exactly what was said over the radio when this event was taking place. And it's kind of irrefutable if you've got them on tape, basically. As it was
you don't have to use a police scanner. You don't have to use a PC. Those are the things that I use. This is an Android phone. It's actually my wife's phone. There are apps in the App Store. You just search for police scanner that link up with the same streams as Broadcastify, and will let you monitor police radios on your smartphone. Here is Chicago. Oh my gosh, it's actually quiet for 2 seconds.
925. There's no answer at the door, but they do have a huge dog there. I don't think anyone's going to break in right now. The apartment is secure. The rest of the building is secure all around, fenced in. So I'm going to make it a 19 call. Everything looks okay. All right, 10-4.
So there you go.
You know what? I just had someone come to the door. I'll let you know. Hold on. All right.
So there you go. You don't even have to have a PC. If you've got a smartphone, there's apps on the store to let you listen to those same streams on your smartphone. Hopefully, you guys learned a little something. Maybe I've shed some light on a way in which you can keep tabs on what's going on in your community, not just for spying on the police, but also for, like I said, during natural disasters. That listening to that radio traffic is an invaluable resource for finding out what's going on in the area. If there's a bad snowstorm and power goes out or whatever, that radio traffic is an invaluable source of information, because you get to hear about things as they happen live. There's no filter. There's no it's not secondhand. You're hearing it directly from their mouths as it's happening. And in areas where racism and police violence is a problem, it's also an invaluable resource, because you can use it to hold those officers accountable for the things that they said and did at the time. Because just like I said a second ago, it's live, it's unfiltered as it happens, and you're hearing it happen. So look into a police scanner if you can, because as I don't know if I'm a prepper, but I like having my own stuff. I don't like depending on some other guy volunteering his equipment and streaming it over the internet, because I'm depending on his equipment his willingness to leave it running for me, my internet connection, and even if my power goes out, I can stick the rubber ducky antenna on that handheld scanner and run it off the batteries until the batteries die, and there's no fee for that because it's picking up their radio traffic off their repeaters. I'm not using the internet or anything. So if you can, and you're in an area where this is a particularly serious issue, maybe even go in with a couple of your friends, a couple of your community leaders, and go in and purchase a scanner that would work in your area, and set up your own monitoring, situation room or something. And if you really just don't want to buy your own scanner, there's probably somebody streaming the radio traffic from your area. Now, as you heard, Chicago, bigger cities like that, but Chicago is particularly bad. There's a lot that goes on. Right there is what's happening in Salyersville, Kentucky. Nothing. Chicago, the second we brought it up, just, so, be aware that depending on the population and the seriousness of the issues in your county or city, it might be a lot of information to process, but it is a way to proactively keep track of what's going on and what your officers are doing, and in the event of a problem, it's a way to, it's evidence that you can use to hold them accountable. And like I said earlier in the first half of the video, to the 99+% of officers out there who are doing their jobs properly, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. You're doing a thankless job. It's one of those jobs to where nobody really notices you until you don't show up when there's a problem, and I realize that, and I thank you, and and I wish you the very best. But now to the minority of you who are wearing a badge because because you have an authority issue, or you just feel like you're Billy Badass, or if you have racist feelings, you probably should find another line of work, because people are going to start holding you accountable. Sure, there is a number of people in this. I'm generally not fond of the Black Lives Matter movement, because to me it seems most of the people who get behind that are not necessarily helping the cause of equality for African Americans in this country. A lot more of them seem to be focused on taking advantage of the situation to burn down their neighbors' businesses instead of attacking the political system that has put them in the situation they're in. But as a whole, people of all colors in this country are becoming less and less tolerant of racism. Even those of us who it doesn't really affect. I'm 30% Native American, but I'm white enough that it doesn't really matter. You can't tell it to look at me. But even those of us that it doesn't really affect are getting tired about hearing of people getting shot on the side of the road because you got scared of a guy who was not posing a lethal threat to you at the time. Now, I'm very aware that allowing somebody to walk back to their car is a good idea, because you don't know if that window's down. You don't know what he's reaching into that window for. You don't know what his intentions are. You don't know what's in his pocket. You don't know nothing about that person. But I have seen more than one incident in just the past couple of months in different cities that indicates to me that perhaps there's a systemic issue with, there's something going on. And I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, because I'm not black, I'm not a cop. But one thing I do know is that something that citizens can do if they feel there is a problem is just monitor what happens. Listen to it yourselves. And who knows, maybe by listening to the police traffic, you might hear details that don't make it to the news, because the news is just as guilty as anybody else of stoking a race war. You'll notice headlines. If somebody gets shot, they don't say, officer shoots unarmed man. It'll be white officer shoots black man. Even if race had nothing to do with what was going on. And so perhaps maybe by listening to the police traffic, not only can you hold those bad officers accountable, but you can also get a first-hand taste of what's running through these guys' minds when they go into these situations. You know, when they realize that there's a large group of people fighting in an alleyway and they need to break it up for the safety of the community, because there was a business owner who said he was worried for the safety of his patrons. They've got to figure out how to take care of that without getting themselves hurt or killed. And you know, listening to that may kind of give you an idea as to what goes on every single day for these police officers. So you can use it to not only you can use it, I think, in a lot of ways to help make communities better by both holding police officers accountable and by listening to what they've got to put up with. So I think I've jabbered on long enough about this issue. All I can say is that at the end of the day, hopefully something I've said in this video, if you've sat here through the whole thing, thanks first of all. But hopefully something I've said in this video can help somebody to do something to make this country a better place for my 2 kids I've got to sleep in the other room in there. Because I would hate to think that in 20 years, when my kids are old enough to vote, that they're going to have to face the exact same issues that we're facing today. So, that's probably going to be the extent of political issues on my YouTube channel for a while, but this is something that just really kind of bothered me, I guess I could say. So, if y'all have any comments, questions, concerns, or suggestions, please feel free to post them in the comment section below. And this is Marcus out. Y'all have a good one.